Another day reviewing cars with the one and only Fenton from the Zygrene channel.
Yo.
And another post-review summary. It's quite a day. Let's start with the BMW 2 Series 3-way. It was a 230i, M240i, M2 3-way. What were your thoughts there?
I mean, I'll give you the condensed version because we have a lot of cars to talk about today. Literally, if you take the 230i and the M2, which are $22,000 separated, and then the M240i is $11,000 from either of the others.
And if they had a baby?
If they had a baby and you just took the average of everything, like the engine output, the power delivery, the grip, and everything, you basically end up with an M240i. It's actually really just that simple.
Yeah, it really does split the difference. And I feel like the M240i is a great balance point for those that want to do daily driver as well as occasional track day or carve the canyons with confidence. M2 is a little bit nervous, a little bit skittish in a way, which I think adds to the fun and the drama. Whereas the 230i is in the opposite direction. It's pretty soft and it's great for daily driving, and it is more nimble when you get in the canyons because 4-cylinder engine, less weight up front. But it doesn't feel at home on the canyons like the other two cars do.
The engine has no top end. It dies out towards the red line.
Yep.
The suspension is very compliant, but also very soft. The transmission out of the three is the slowest, even though they're all ZF8s.
For whatever reason, when they made the ZF8 to the B48, it feels like a totally different transmission. Like the B58 and S58 paired with the ZF8 speed, incredible for a torque converter.
Yeah.
Whereas with the B48, just way slower.
Yeah.
Just to wrap that up, if it was your money, what would you go for?
I wouldn't get any of them, to be honest. They just don't fit my use case. Like, there's no use case that justifies
but
those cars.
if you were in the market for a 2 Series, what would you lean toward?
I mean, I think I'd go M2 just because it's the most track focused one. If I were to get it purely as a daily, like, I don't think any 2 Series really makes sense, but I guess the 230i is the most comfortable and efficient, so.
Yeah, I think for me, I would, if it was my daily and my single vehicle, I should say, I would go M240i because I think you get a great balance point where it's still comfortable for daily duty. It's a nicer, more reasonable price point. And then M2 if I wanted something that was more fun focused and I had something else that I could daily, because it is going to be a little bit more stiff. It is going to be a bit more special for that kind of occasion. But I'm the same as you. Like, I obviously like dedicated sports cars rather than tarted up BMWs. Yeah. Okay, on to the next. Let's talk about the Nissan GT-R.
Well, you tell me about it first, because I've driven 3 of them now and my opinion hasn't changed.
First time driving a Nissan GT-R. This is the R35, and dude, I was really impressed because all the reviews from back in the day, they called this thing Numb. It was too computer driven. It was, like digital, not analog. And this was back in 2007, 2008 when the car first came out. This was a 2012 model year, so a few changes with the facelift. But oh my God, the hydraulic steering was awesome. The power delivery was incredible. You essentially feel the best of both worlds, where you have the fun playfulness of a front-engine rear-wheel drive car. It's willing to dance a little bit with you. There's a bit of drama and excitement. And yet, when you actually want to put the power down, it can also claw for grip and give you incredible acceleration, incredible stability. That guy just got pulled over.
Yikes.
Officer, I'm going precisely the speed limit. There we go, 45 and a 45. So I was really pleasantly surprised by the car because I came in expecting very heavy car, 3,850 pounds. Again, the more digital reviews. I guess that just shows you how far we've come from back then, where what was considered digital versus analog back then is so different to digital versus analog today.
I mean, perfect example. And on the note of weight, right? Like, that car was super heavy when it came out, but today we literally drove an M2, which is the baby M car, that weighs the same or more than that and feels less connected. At least
it feels far less connected. And even the M240i, both the M240i and M2 are 3,800 pounds, within 50 pounds of the heavyweight GTR, which is just, it's wild, man.
Yeah.
Wild.
The thing I love about the GTR is that even, 17, 18 years after its debut, the tuning of that all-wheel drive system and the dual clutch and the engine, it still feels modern in a way that, maybe not modern, but it feels clever. It doesn't feel like ancient tech.
That's funny. I had a very similar conclusion in my video, which was that it doesn't feel its age. It feels closer. Like, if you think back to, if you compare it against a modern PDK, it's going to feel a bit slow, a little bit clunky in comparison. But when you compare it to other things from back in the day, it was ahead of its time.
I mean,
such that nowadays, when you compare it to contemporary vehicles, it does not feel like it's 13 years old.
I mean, just for reference, right? An AP2 S2000, you could get in 2008.
That's
Compare
wild.
that to a
That is
135
wild,
GTR.
dude. Yeah. All right, next car was Mercedes AMG GTR. By the way, you realize that these post-review summaries are kind of like my version of a podcast?
Yeah, pretty much.
Like, you have your
Condensed
your
version.
proper podcast, and this is like the POV podcast,
Yeah,
essentially.
yeah, same talking points.
Yeah. All right, AMG GTR.
Heavily modified, or at least with the suspension, it had the KW competition dampers from the GT4 race car, which in my opinion were very not well matched to a bumpy canyon road, at least in terms of the whatever damping setting the owner had it on. Granted, it's understandable because it's a track car for him. He tracks it quite a lot, but I think that was really the limiting factor for me because it had a lot of bounce over the bumps. But outside of that, I think the car is really impressive. It's a front midship design. Just looking under the engine bay, which is super, super long. It's very, you sit really far back relative to the front of the car. The engine is mounted far back, and you feel that low, polar moment of inertia. But it's not perfect. I think the dual clutch is not quite as impressive as a contemporary PDK. The steering is a little bit light, a little bit numb. But that engine is such a highlight for me. Like, it's so much more powerful than anything you get from Porsche outside of a GT3 RS.
Yeah, I think it surprised me by how nimble and willing to change directions it felt, because when you look at it, sure, it's definitely a sports car, but you feel like, this is still like a Mercedes, and you think that it's going to have some more GT flavor to it.
Right.
Very much sports car, and with that engine front midship, very much willing to change direction. But yeah, at the price, we were talking about how it compares to a 991 GT3.
Dot one.
Dot one, right.
Yeah.
The dot two would be more expensive. But compared to a dot one, I feel like I respect the car a lot. I agree the engine is incredible. But all these little details that Porsche gets by dialing out the same recipe year after year, generation after generation, steering didn't feel quite as natural. Even the pedal feel, like, the brakes, they feel good, but not quite as high resolution as Porsche, not nearly as much feedback. Transmission is a little bit slower, not quite as sharp and precise. It has more road presence, it has more excitement and drama in certain ways, but it's more just like, there's no better or worse here. I think it's just two very different approaches to a sports car at that price point on the market right now.
I agree with that. I think the road presence thing is so drastically different. And that's part of the reason why I'm so drawn towards the AMG GTR, especially with all the crazy aftermarket aero that Richard did. But I would agree. Like, end of the day, if you're looking for that finesse in your driving experience, the Dot One GT3 still provides more of that, which is also kind of expected because it's like 500 pounds lighter.
Yeah, true. Big weight advantage. I guess the last one, speaking of GT3s, we had a 991.1 GT3 versus a 991.2 GT3 RS. Now, we drove the GT3 RS previously on this road, but it was wet that day, so neither one of us was able to push it as hard as we wanted to. Today, it was dry. We were able to push that harder, and then had the 991.1 GT3 as a reference point. Essentially, the lowest price 991 GT3 you can get against the highest price 991 GT3 that you can buy, which I think is like 110 to 140 for the Dot One,
Yeah.
and then 200 to 250K for the Dot 2 RS.
Right.
What were your thoughts, man?
So I drove the Dot One GT3 first, and I came away thinking, like, there's no way the .2 GT3 RS could be more than like 7% better than this in every way. Even though the .1 GT3 wasn't perfect, like the PDK, I think partial throttle upshifts did feel like they were dragging on the clutches a little bit. The suspension compliance was good, but it felt maybe a little bit not super dialed in, especially the rear end over bumps. But overall, it's the GT3 formula. You mentioned this earlier, like refined year after year, facelift after facelift, generation after generation, and even the 10-year-old version of that is so dialed in. But then I jumped into the .2 3 RS, and within 3 corners, literally 3 corners, I was like, there's the difference. And it came down to that front end response for me, like the suspension tuning in the .2 3 RS. I think because of the spherical bearings, the uprated springs and dampers, everything felt that basically 10% sharper. And outside of that, I think the cars are maybe less than 10 to 15% better. Engine is like, you get a little bit more torque, some more top end power, but it's not a drastic difference. The transmission is definitely snappier in the .2, but I think the suspension and the front end response, I think, is where I felt the biggest difference.
Yeah, the biggest difference is definitely the chassis tuning there. The .1 has a little bit of this like harshness to the suspension, at least initial impact. Like, I wouldn't say crashy, but it's in that direction. Whereas the .2 RS, you can feel the sophistication in the suspension. It's supple and yet firm and controlled. The front end being extra sharp with those spherical bushings. It feels excellent. And I agree, the biggest difference is there. But like I was telling you and the owner, I feel like, the price jumps by a factor of more than 2. And the driving experience, I would say, in the .1 GT3 is 85% of that of the RS. Because the .1 already had, if you compare it to just about any other car, it already has an incredible engine, an incredible transmission, a lot of incredible factors to it, and the RS just takes it up another notch or 2 in these various components. I also feel like the RS had a bit better steering. Now, it was slightly lighter than the .1, which actually I was expecting the opposite, especially with the wider section width tires in the front too by 20 mil. But it had a better signal to noise ratio where you got a bit more feedback, but the noise level was the same. So I like that better. And again, a lot of these things were just kind of incremental versus revolutionary. If it was my money, I'd probably go middle ground. I think you and I agree on this. 991.2 GT3 rather than either the .1 or the RS.
I'd agree with that, especially because you can get the .2 GT3 with a manual.
Yeah, you get a manual, and it's sub 200K at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the way I'd sum up the 3RS .2 versus the regular GT3 .1 is, if you take any component in isolation, it's a noticeable but very small and incremental change. Like if you take just the dampers alone, or just the transmission on its own, or just the engine. But I think that overall, just all the small incremental changes together, it provides a noticeably better driving experience, but it still feels cohesive and very congruent. And that's what I love about the 3RS package. You're paying a lot more money, but at the end of the day, it's still just such a well-balanced product, and that's why I love it.
My friends, the links to all these video comparisons, both on the Zygrene channel and on this channel, linked down below. Let us know what you think with a comment down below. Much love, and see you all in the next one.